You're 12 years old, your body just did something completely horrifying, and you have absolutely no idea if you're dying or if this is normal. Your voice cracked in front of everyone, or blood just appeared somewhere it's never been before, or hair is growing in places that were smooth yesterday. Your emotions are doing things that feel genuinely insane. You're convinced something is medically, catastrophically wrong with you, and you can't Google it. You can't pull out your phone and type, "Is this normal?" into a search bar. You can't watch a YouTube video. You can't anonymously scroll through Reddit threads from other people who went through the same thing. You can't even crack open a biology textbook because those don't exist yet. You're just a kid with a body that's suddenly violently changing, and the only resources you have are the people around you who may or may not explain what's happening, and your own ability to survive the confusion. That was puberty for 200,000 years of human history. No sex ed classes, no pamphlets, no understanding of hormones or reproductive biology, just bodies transforming according to genetic timelines that nobody understood, and young humans trying to figure out what the hell was happening to them. How did they do it? How did ancient humans navigate one of the most disorienting experiences of human life with literally zero medical knowledge? The answer isn't one thing. It's a mix of ritual, observation, community structure, and honestly, a lot of trial and error that would make a modern parent lose their mind. And when you put all the pieces together, you realize something strange. In some ways, they handled it better than we do. Let's go. First, understand what's happening biologically, because this hasn't changed in 300,000 years. You hit puberty when your brain's hypothalamus decides it's time. It starts releasing gonadotropin-releasing hormone, which tells your pituitary gland to start pumping out luteinizing hormone and follicle-stimulating hormone. Those hormones kick your reproductive system online. In people with ovaries, estrogen floods the system. In people with testes, testosterone. That's the same cascade that happened to a 13-year-old Homo sapiens in 50,000 BCE. Same hormones, same timeline, more or less, same body chaos. But here's the difference. That kid in 50,000 BCE had no framework for what was happening internally. They didn't know what a hormone was. They didn't know they had a pituitary gland. The entire experience was purely external and completely mysterious. Anthropologists studying contemporary hunter-gatherer groups, the closest living analogs we have to ancestral human societies, found something consistent. Puberty wasn't explained. It was observed. Among the Hadza people of Tanzania, one of the last remaining hunter-gatherer societies, young people aren't given lectures about what puberty is. They just see it happen to older siblings, cousins, friends. They watch bodies change. They notice when someone gets their first period or when a boy's voice drops. It's treated as visible fact, not hidden mystery. The first bleed for a girl? That wasn't a medical emergency. It was a marker, a line crossed. In dozens of cultures across continents, menarche was the signal that childhood was over, but the why behind it was never really explained in biological terms because nobody had those terms. The experience was just filed under "this is what bodies do," like growing taller, like losing baby teeth. You didn't need to understand why, you just needed to survive it. Here's where it gets interesting. Ancient humans didn't have Google, but they had something else, ceremony. Ritual wasn't just symbolic, it was functional. It was the closest thing they had to an instruction manual. Take the Apache sunrise ceremony, which has been practiced for over 1,000 years. When a girl experiences menarche, she undergoes a 4-day ritual that involves dancing, singing, physical endurance tests, and guidance from older women in the tribe. It's not a party, it's a structured transformation. During those 4 days, she's being taught, not about fallopian tubes or ovulation, but about her new role, about what's expected of her body now, about pain tolerance because menstruation hurts and childbirth is worse, about endurance, about the knowledge that every woman in her lineage went through this exact same thing and survived. That's psychological preparation disguised as spirituality. The same pattern shows up everywhere. The Krobo people of Ghana have Dipo, a rite of passage for girls reaching puberty that lasts several weeks. The Sateremawe people of Brazil have the bullet ant ritual for boys, where they wear gloves filled with bullet ants and endure the stings to prove they can handle adult pain. Painful? Absolutely. Traumatic by modern standards? For sure. But also effective. These rituals did 2 critical things. One, they removed ambiguity. You knew exactly when childhood ended because there was a ceremony marking it. No confusion, no "am I an adult yet" limbo. The ritual answered that. 2, they created community witnessing. Everyone saw you go through it. You weren't alone with your changing body. You were surrounded by people who had survived the same process and were now watching you survive it too. Anthropologist Arnold van Gennep called these rites of passage, and he noted they always follow the same 3-stage structure: separation from childhood, transformation during the ritual, and reintegration as an adult. That structure gave puberty a beginning, middle, and end. It gave it a story. And humans are very, very good at surviving things when we can turn them into stories. But what about the practical stuff? What about the actual day-to-day, what do I do with this body now questions? That's where the elders came in, specifically elder women and elder men operating in completely separate spheres. In most ancestral societies, knowledge transfer was gendered and age-based. Girls learned from older women. Boys learned from older men. There was no co-ed health class. When a girl got her first period, she wasn't handed a pamphlet. She was handed to the women. Aunts, grandmothers, older sisters, they explained, in whatever terms made sense in that culture, what was happening. They showed her how to manage bleeding. In some cultures, that meant specific types of cloth or animal hide. In others, it meant seclusion during menstruation in a separate hut. The Yurok people of Northern California had menstrual lodges where women would go during their periods. Modern readers often interpret this as oppressive isolation, and in some cultures it absolutely was. But anthropologists who studied these practices found that women also described them as relief, a break from labor, time with other women, a space where they could talk openly about what their bodies were doing without men present. The knowledge passed down wasn't medical, it was experiential. This is what happened to me. This is what my mother told me. This is how you stop the bleeding. This is how long it lasts. This is how you know if something is wrong. For boys, the transfer was different. Older men would explain, usually very bluntly, what erections were, what ejaculation meant, what it signified about fertility and readiness for certain adult roles, usually hunting or warfare. There's a documented account from a 19th century anthropologist studying indigenous Australian groups where a boy's initiation into manhood included older men explicitly explaining nocturnal emissions and sexual function. Not with diagrams, but with direct language and lived experience. It wasn't delicate, it wasn't textbook, but it was information, transferred human to human, the only way it could be. Now, let's be completely honest. Ancient humans didn't have all the answers. They didn't even have most of the answers. A lot of what they believed about puberty was just wrong. Wildly, dangerously wrong. Many cultures believed menstruation made women spiritually unclean or physically toxic. Pliny the Elder, a Roman naturalist writing in the 1st century CE, claimed that menstrual blood could kill crops, sour wine, and dull the edge of steel. Women were often isolated during their periods not out of care, but out of fear that their presence would contaminate things. That's not neutral, that's harmful. That belief caused real psychological damage to young girls who internalized the idea that their bodies were polluting. Some indigenous Arctic cultures believed that if a girl experiencing menarche looked at the sky, it would cause storms. She'd be kept indoors, sometimes for weeks, to avoid bringing disaster to the community. Boys didn't escape pseudoscience either. In many cultures, there were beliefs that nocturnal emissions were a loss of life force or strength. Some ancient Greek physicians thought semen contained a man's vital essence, and that losing it unnecessarily would weaken him. And the consequences of getting puberty wrong were severe in ways we don't deal with anymore. A girl who didn't understand menstruation might think she was hemorrhaging and dying. A boy experiencing his first wet dream might believe he was sick or cursed. Without accurate information, the default response to bodily changes was often fear. Plus, and this is the darkest part, puberty in ancient societies often signaled immediate readiness for marriage and childbirth. A girl's first period in many cultures meant she could be married off, sometimes to much older men. Her body's biological development was treated as social permission for things she was nowhere near emotionally ready for. We've thankfully moved past that in most of the world, but for most of human history, puberty wasn't just physical transformation. It was the starting gun for adult responsibilities, whether you were ready or not. Here's the twist. For all the misinformation, for all the fear-based superstition, ancient humans got something right that modern society has almost completely lost. They treated puberty as a community event, not a private crisis. Think about how we handle it now. A kid starts going through puberty, and the response is usually embarrassment and privacy. Don't talk about it. Here's a book. Figure it out. Maybe a one-time awkward conversation. The message, intentional or not, is, this is something you deal with alone. That isolation is new. For 200,000 years, puberty was public. Everyone knew when you hit it. Everyone had gone through it. There was no pretending it wasn't happening. And that meant there was no shame spiral. You couldn't spiral into, is this just me, because you'd literally watched it happen to everyone else. Psychologists studying adolescent mental health have noticed something troubling in modern populations. Puberty is now one of the most isolating experiences of young life. Kids feel like their bodies are betraying them in ways nobody else understands. They're comparing themselves to airbrushed images and filtered social media. They're Googling symptoms at 2 a.m. and convincing themselves something's wrong. Ancient humans didn't have that spiral because the frame was different. Your body changing wasn't a you problem. It was a human problem. Everyone's body did this. The elders survived it. You would too. There's something powerful in that, not the superstition, not the isolation rituals based on fear, but the basic acknowledgement you are not alone in this, and the people around you know what you're going through because they went through it too. We've traded that communal knowledge for privacy and medical accuracy, which is mostly a good trade, but we've also accidentally created a system where young people feel more alone in their puberty than at any point in human history. Here's the thing that'll stick with you. For 99% of human history, every single person who went through puberty did it without understanding what a hormone was, without knowing what their ovaries or testes were doing, without a diagram of a reproductive system. And they still figured it out. Humanity didn't go extinct from confusion. We're here, which means billions of teenagers across hundreds of thousands of years survived their bodies, transforming without a single WebMD article. They survived it through observation, through ritual, through older humans saying, I went through this, here's what happens next, through trial and error and community structure, and the simple, repeated experience of watching bodies change and understanding that this was just what bodies did. Modern medicine gave us the why. We can explain puberty down to the molecular level now. We can predict it, track it, medicate it if it goes wrong. That's incredible. That's progress. But ancient humans had something we're still trying to rebuild. The certainty that transformation is survivable, because everyone before you survived it too. They didn't need Google because they had grandmothers. They didn't need YouTube tutorials because they had ceremonial instruction. They didn't need privacy because they had communal acceptance. Was it perfect? Absolutely not. It was often cruel, often wrong, often traumatic in ways we've rightfully moved past. But it was also certain, and for a 12-year-old kid whose body just started doing inexplicable things, certainty that this is normal and survivable might be the most important thing of all. So yeah, you've got Google now. You've got sex ed, however awkward. You've got access to more information about your body than any human in history. And that's good. That's genuinely, objectively better than not knowing why you're bleeding or why your voice sounds like a broken violin. But maybe, just maybe, we lost something when we made puberty a private experience instead of a communal one. When we started treating it like a medical condition to be managed quietly instead of a universal transformation to be witnessed and guided through. Your ancestors went through puberty surrounded by people who'd survived it. You probably went through it alone in your room with a search history you immediately deleted. Both of you made it out the other side, but one of those experiences came with the built-in knowledge that everyone around you had your back because they'd been exactly where you were. The next time you see a kid going through that awkward, brutal phase of life, maybe just let them know, this is what bodies do. It's always been what bodies do. You're not broken. You're not weird. You're just human. And humans have been figuring this out, one generation at a time, for 200,000 years. You're going to be fine. They always were.